Section 5.5.10 Mandatory Sentences. Hello, I'm Dr. Adam McKee, and today we're exploring one of the most hotly debated topics from my book, Criminal Justice, an overview of the system. We're talking about mandatory sentences. What are they, why do they matter, and why are they so controversial? Let's dive in. So, what exactly are mandatory sentences? In simple terms, mandatory sentences are a type of criminal sentencing that removes the judge's discretion and requires the convicted offender to receive a specified minimum sentence. This means that no matter the circumstances, the judge must impose at least the minimum sentence set by the law. These sentences are usually established by legislative bodies and are often aimed at serious or violent crimes. The primary goal of mandatory sentences is to ensure that offenders receive a punishment that fits the crime they committed. This is meant to create a sense of uniformity and fairness in sentencing, so that similar crimes receive similar punishments. However, this approach has its critics. Critics argue that mandatory sentences can sometimes be too harsh, especially for nonviolent offenders. Imagine someone who committed a minor drug offense receiving a lengthy prison sentence that seems out of proportion to the crime. This rigidity can lead to unjust outcomes and doesn't allow judges to consider the unique circumstances of each case. One of the significant consequences of mandatory sentences is prison overcrowding. When people are sentenced to long prison terms for relatively minor offenses, it can lead to a ballooning prison population. This has prompted policymakers to think about alternatives to incarceration, such as community service, probation, or treatment programs for nonviolent offenders. A common application of mandatory sentences is seen in habitual offender laws, especially for repeat drug offenders. These laws often stipulate that offenders who have committed multiple drug-related offenses must receive mandatory minimum sentences. This can result in very long prison terms for individuals caught up in repeated, nonviolent drug offenses. Under federal law, mandatory sentences also play a role in plea bargaining. Prosecutors can use the threat of filing under the prior felony statute, which carries a mandatory minimum sentence, as leverage. They might offer a reduced sentence if the defendant agrees to plead guilty to a lesser charge and waive their right to trial. This tactic can encourage guilty pleas, sometimes helping to avoid lengthy and costly trials. Despite these practical uses, mandatory sentences remain a contentious issue. Proponents argue that they are necessary to deter crime and promote public safety. They believe that strict, consistent sentences can act as a strong deterrent, preventing people from committing serious offenses in the first place. On the other hand, opponents believe that mandatory sentences often fail to account for individual circumstances and can lead to disproportionate and unjust outcomes. They argue that judges should have the flexibility to tailor sentences based on the specifics of each case, considering factors like the offender's background, the nature of the crime, and the potential for rehabilitation. The debate over mandatory sentences is likely to continue as society grapples with finding the right balance between punishment and fairness. It's a complex issue with valid arguments on both sides, and finding a solution that works for everyone is no easy task. In summary, mandatory sentences are designed to ensure that serious crimes receive appropriate punishment, but their rigid nature can sometimes lead to overly harsh outcomes, especially for nonviolent offenders. The controversy around mandatory sentences highlights the ongoing struggle to create a fair and effective criminal justice system. Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave any questions you have in the comments below. I'm Dr. Adam McKee, and I look forward to exploring more criminal justice topics with you next time. Stay informed and stay curious.